And you mentioned earlier that poetry had played a big role in your healing process. Yeah. I
Yeah.
wonder if you have time to pull it up and read one or two of them.
Ooh.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. 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 So then we have it's called Your Living Prose. Piece by piece, you pick me up off this messy floor. Once whole and complete, I stand here replete with fractures I abhor. I cannot reflect you, my image dejects you, my brokenness spills into view. My Lord and my God, how often I trod, now justified, bid you adieu. My Lord, how I loved you, but somewhere I lost you. I lie here bereft of all hope. But intrigued by your presence, in spite of my essence, I glance up at you, my unknown. Didn't know that was prayer, this active expression, this looking upon in utter dejection. But all that you needed were eyes that exceeded this gaze beyond their own nose. So you work and you play at this art of your heart. Restoring is your living prose. Piece by piece, the fragments confront you. You know every speck. The edges don't cut you. Laboring over the one who is shattered. You smooth what was sharp, collect what was scattered. Out of this broken new image is forged. It shimmers and sparkles, a sight to behold. Metamorphosed, this icon of the soul, the master, the artist, completed his goal. I never suspected the marvelous treasure that I could become at the hands of the master. I want to declare this huge reconstruction he did for this girl on the brink of destruction. I started as glass, pretty and clean. My choices did crack it, no longer pristine. I thought the best end would be imperfect glass, but heavenly alchemy, diamonds, alas.
Welcome to Flourishing in Faith, the place where you can discover stories of hope, truth, and glory, as well as find life hacks to live your faith more fully. Hi, I'm Julie, a daughter of God, certified professional life coach, wife, and mother of four. After trying to do everything the wrong way, I've been overwhelmed by healing, joy, and freedom through Jesus and the gifts of grace He makes available to each and every one of us. My passion is to share what I've been given with others. I'm glad you're here. Let's begin. Nora Franche is a Christian wife and working mother of 5 amazing kiddos, from teenager all the way down to toddler. She's a certified mindset coach and the producer and host of the podcast Grateful, Blessed, Mess, which includes 365 days of short reflections on the 12 steps for Christian women. What's even more amazing to me is she took the time to do that podcast of inspiring episodes while on maternity leave. Superwoman. She has been on a healing journey herself and is here to share about that today. Her passion for living a life of Christian freedom is contagious. And if you feel alone on your 12-step journey, or if you want to learn the skills to grow in self-acceptance, self-assessment, and self-awareness, she can help you do that. You can find her at the CatholicMindsetCoaching.com website, CatholicMindsetCoaching.com, or at the Grateful Blessed Mess Patreon community linked in the show notes. Thanks so much for joining us today. And Nora, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. That is a super complimentary or flattering intro. I appreciate it.
Was everything on there accurate?
Yeah, I don't know if people know what you mean when you say interior life, so it just helps to spell it out.
Yeah. And I love what you say at the end of your podcast episodes, how you say, if you're here, chances are you may also be a bit of a mess. And I hope you can learn to find some gratitude in the blessings that come from your messes. When I heard that, I was like, amen, because
Yeah, yeah.
isn't.
Yeah, that started from my early 12-step days. People would introduce themselves as a grateful compulsive overeater. And I just was like, oh, it was like repulsive to me. I was like, how can you be grateful for this? And then you learn it can transform into, a blessing from your mess.
Yeah, it's crazy how, I don't know, it blows my mind all the time how God, He just takes whatever, even the dumb stuff we do, He transforms it somehow and uses it for good. And even that phrase, our trials can become our testimonies.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what happened in your life. You've had all these various trials And because you've given them over to God, it seems like He's given you some kind of calling, some kind of purpose. Do you want to share a little bit about how things were and what led you to doing the work that you're so passionate about now?
Yeah. I want to be clear that I have not arrived by any stretch of the imagination, or that I don't continue to struggle to hand my trials over, because that is not the case. But what I have been gifted with is knowing a way to do that. That has changed. Like nothing changes and yet everything changes, because there's just a shift. So I can give you an idea of kind of what things were like. It's always a bit of a dance because I still slide back some days to what it was like. And then I have to go through that journey again with something else. And you come out to the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't think that was possible. And then you get to ride that wave for a little while. And then something else sets you back. And it's just, oh man.
I feel like I used to approach life and think that I'd have this one giant moment of conversion, changing my heart, and then, okay, I'm done. And then I was listening to something the other day and it was talking about how our entire lives, the work of sanctification continues. What do they call it in the 12-step program? One day at a time.
Yeah, they really are good with their slogans.
Yeah.
There's so many. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. But yeah, so you were asking me just what it was like. So it was a lot of negativity. It was a lot of only seeing what's hard. And I had a really big shift. My 12-step history includes an eating disorder and finding help through the 12 steps with that. The funny thing is that the way God works is so cool. I felt like a distant Catholic. I was going through the motions for like teens, late teens into my early 20s. And my early 20s is when I found the 12 steps. It was like God used the 12 steps to bring me back to his heart. And when you hear someone else say something different, like from religious people, you should always pray, you should examine your conscience, you do all these things. When I heard people who were like gutter drunks, who, who weren't Catholic, saying the exact same things and telling me that's how you get out of your disease, I was like, huh, maybe there's something to that. And then it was just like a long story of falling in love, basically, with my Catholic faith. A big changing moment for me in my 12-step journey, but just life, was the third step. It suggests that you turn your will and your life over to the care of the God of your understanding. And I had a big light bulb moment when I realized that if the God of my understanding was someone who is good and gentle and safe, like scripture says, it wouldn't be so hard or feel so scary to turn my will and my life over to him. And when I had that realization, it was just like, it was massive. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. It was like, now I know what I constantly need to be going back to when I'm getting stuck on something. And it was, how am I viewing God in this moment? If this is true, if this is bigger than me, if I can't do this thing, then what does that mean I'm thinking about God?
Yeah.
And is that true? Yeah. And so that kind of led to my calling, what I see as my calling, and wanting to help people get through their blocks and whatever they're going through by helping them refine their understanding of, who do you see God to be in this moment? And is that true? Is that something you want to hold on to? And how can we change it? That's one avenue of how I work with people. Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like that one question is so powerful. Like, how do you see God in this moment? Or how are your thoughts that you're having right now? If you take them all the way back to where they began,
Mm.
what is that belief that you're holding about God by pursuing a worry?
Mm-hmm.
Or like for me, I always try to control everything. And so if I'm trying to control everything, like why? And what does that say? Am I actually trusting God with what I'm doing or with the outcome of what I'm doing or,
Yeah.
with my loved ones, with my kids especially, right?
Yeah. And that control piece is so hard because we still have to do the work.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just be like, okay, take care of everything. But then at the same time, yeah, you have to ask yourself, if you dial back in that, in your mind somewhere, am I thinking it's not going to go well if it doesn't go this way? And you're like, no, I
Yeah.
think this way would be best.
Okay, so Nora, I know 2020 for most of us was like a bad dream that we just want to forget, but I know talking to you and reading through a little bit of what you shared before, it sounds like when the COVID drama came into your life and you had to face all the consequences of what happened from that, that was one of the turning points that God used to break into your life. You said you were feeling a little bit trapped in certain aspects of your life. Can you share about that? Because I think you're not alone in that. I think there are a lot of people and a lot of women who could relate to that feeling of on the outside, everything looks beautiful, everything looks great, highlight reels on social media and all that stuff. What was that like for you?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question. And like different parts of your life look different, right?
Yeah.
But for my home life, yeah, you weren't going anywhere really. You were stuck at home all the time. And then we all got COVID at the same time, right after Christmas, kind of a thing. The beauty of COVID, something that it did for me was all the online, like free summits. And they were such a gift. And I ended up listening to them lots and lots. And that was actually the first time that I was completely absorbed in something that was just my own. Instead of looking to my husband to help fill my life and make me feel valued, I was like, this is fascinating. This is interesting. I want to do this. And that was where I finally got into coaching. And at first it was just like their podcast. I got certified through Metanoid Catholic. I heard one of them speak on the summit, Erin Ingold. And I was like, she's cool.
Yeah.
And I liked what she had to say. It was the first time someone challenged me to look at my part in a way that I had struggled to in the 12 steps. The 12 steps encourages you to, but I very much felt like the victim. Coaching was like, what are your thoughts that you're having? And what emotions do those create? And what actions are you performing? And do those bring you toward God or away from God? And I had to be like, shoot, away. It called me out in a holy way almost to be like, in all loving compassion,
Yeah.
this is what it's leading to. And I
Yeah.
was like, man, yeah. It unveiled eventually a calling to want to help people stop feeling trapped in their own situation, whatever it is, to own their part to whatever extent they can or need to, and find freedom through that as well.
Yeah. It's like that radical accountability that we have for our own thoughts that take every thought captive to Christ. That's true freedom. If God gives you the grace to be able to do that, and then you have all these other tools, that awareness to be able to do that. I mean, you can go from having a ton of discontent and resentment and anger in your marriage, for example, to a marriage filled with gratitude and possibility and potential and hope just by changing the way you're thinking, what you're saying to yourself about what your husband's doing. What's
Absolutely.
wrong with him versus I wonder what's going on with him, or he knows that I hate that versus I wonder why he forgot. That bothers me. I hope like even just
Yeah.
little changes in the way the catechism says how we're supposed to always assume the best intent for other people's actions, even their thoughts. We're supposed to assume that other people are having good thoughts about us. And even like with social interactions for me, I feel like I'm in seventh grade again when I'm at like in the lunchroom and I can't, oh, they're
Pick
having a
up.
parent. Yeah, they're doing like a parent meet and greet at the school, and you can go and have dinner with all the other parents. And they're probably going to think I'm annoying or no.
I'm not gonna be able to talk to them.
Yeah, there's so much freedom that can be had by controlling like what thoughts we have, and are they true, and what do they say about our understanding of how we're made and our own dignity. What are some of the quotes or inspiring slogans or scripture or anything that have helped you on your journey?
Oh, the glory of God is man fully alive.
Yeah.
And I like to combine it with Saint Ambrose of Milan, who said, know, O beautiful soul, that you are the glory of God.
Yeah.
And it had me thinking, like, first, what is the glory of God? I was like, this is so beautiful. And what does that mean? And I've come to know it's like expressions of his goodness. Like my life can be an expression of his goodness. But the other Where that ties into coaching and COVID in 2020 was I started to receive coaching.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the ways that like you fall back in your head is I was complaining about my home life. And I said that something made me feel so insignificant. Like the way he responded made me feel so insignificant. And it's so painful. And she said, Nora, that's really interesting. What makes you significant? And I was stymied. I couldn't answer. I could not answer. And it forced me to turn outward because I was turning inward. I wanted him to tell me. I wanted his attention to help me know my own significance. And it forced me to turn outward and fall in love doubly again with my faith and finding out my significance comes from, yes, my identity and who I am in God, but it was my own language of a way that the catechism and scripture started to make sense to me. And two of those things were those quotes that I shared with you. Like, know, oh beautiful soul, that you are the glory of God. Like, me? Like, little me? And yeah, how can I live into that?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's one of those moments when you've got a really good coach asking those good questions.
Erin Ingold, she's so
Nice.
good. She's yeah, professional question askers is how I've heard coaches referred to as.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So your 12-step journey, that started well before the 2020 turning point when
Mhm.
you started to finally, be given these tools to incorporate all of those wonderful things into one. And then what was born from that was your own work that you're doing. What
Yeah.
was your story before that? What was your healing journey before that? Is there anything you could share with us there?
Yeah. So before 2020, yeah. So for me, I had a big wound of feeling like the Catholic kid in a Catholic school and being made fun of for it, whether overtly or just known. You can pick up on it. And what it led me to do is eventually in high school just want to reject that identity because it was painful and lonely. Like I shared just a little earlier, that rejection eventually it ties in well. Now, I feel like I needed it. I needed that space. Like you need to get far from home to then appreciate home
Yeah.
all the more. And so I'm grateful for it, but it led to a lot of spiraling, a lot of pain. I comment on it a little bit on my Grateful Blessed Mess blog that I started, that I made just as an outpouring of the poetry that started coming up as I started to really heal. I just wanted somewhere to put it.
Yeah.
And I commented on it, and I just felt like I started to die inside the farther I got from it, whether I knew it or not. And that's when my eating disorder really started to rage. I didn't know that these things were happening all at once or all connected. And so it was just this beauty of my wound of feeling isolated and then becoming transformed by the 12 steps in a way that caused me to fall in love with my faith in a whole different way. And now to be someone who wants to shout it from the rooftops that, like, this, there's just so much love. There's truth. Things just make so much sense to me in a way that, like, I feel like only God could have done in the way that He brought me through my own story and brought me to all these different things. And so, yeah, it's just from like those lowest places that we become teachable, I think, but that we can then see the beauty on the other side if we're lucky enough to keep going in it, which I think is just a grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what you said about finally being able to hear it, because for me too, I had to get pretty far from God to get to a point where I was willing to ask for His help. It's a form of humility. I came to the end of myself at some point, and that's when I was like, okay, I actually want to hear that it's possible that He could love us. What do you wish you could have been able to hear before you got to your 12-step journey, when you were still struggling with your eating disorder? There might be some people listening to this who also have that kind of pain and struggle in their life. Is there anything, looking back now, that you would say to yourself, or any kind of hope that you would want to share with someone else who's facing that kind of struggle today?
Yes, that He loves you just as you are. And you hear the second part, not enough to leave you there. But like for now, you probably just need to hear that He loves you just as you are. that precisely where you're hurting is where he's trying to meet you. So I think for me, it felt more like running. It felt more like God's over there and I'm over here. And on the one hand, I don't know how to bridge that gap, but on the other hand, he's really demanding and he's really scary. And he's just going to tell me all the things I did wrong if I show up. And there's a beautiful, I'm getting a little emotional about it, but sorry. There's a beautiful poem that I came across not too long ago. You may have heard of it. It's The Hound of Heaven. It's very long. So it was written by Francis Thompson at like the turn of the century, like from the 18th to the 1900s. And it starts out about how he fled from God. It starts out beautifully. I fled him down the arches of the years, down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind. And it's like all the things he did. He became a drunk. He was addicted to opiates. And then it was his own transformation of how he saw God. Towards the end of the poem, there's this line about what God was doing the whole time. And it was like how he kept certain things from him. And this is God saying, yes, but not for thy harms, but so that you would find it in my arms. And I still write that on my cup at work a lot of days to remind myself, because I'm still so much on the journey and I'm still someone who very much needs to be reminded of that truth. But it's, you're not holding out on me. You're trying to bring me home. That's what I want people to know too, that God's not letting you flail in the wind and he's not just watching you suffer. He wants to use it as a means to bring you home, to bring him into his heart.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. I'll have to post a link to that poem.
Yeah,
Is that
included in the show notes.
yeah, I'll put that on the show notes. And you talked about how faith was a part of your life growing up and you fell away. And I think that's a pretty common story. I know for me, that's a big part of what happened too. It's interesting because have you ever listened to anything by like Greg and Lisa Popchak? They have
A little. I am familiar with them.
one of the things I love that they say is how a lot of our understanding with our faith is, I'm not going to do it justice how they do it, but it's like a triangle, and how all these other things within our faith, the importance of prayer, the sacraments, the 10 commandments, like all of the, they say rules without relationship equals rebellion, but it's deeper than that, because the bottom of the triangle is the foundation. And if we don't start out everything with knowing how much we're loved by God, then all the other stuff just doesn't make sense. There's no place. And I think that's one place where a lot of people fail in sharing the faith with others, and especially within their own family, if they are a person of faith and their friends and family are not, is that they'll start talking about these things that are higher up on the theological understanding, higher up on the pyramid. And when you're talking to someone that doesn't even know that they're made in the image and likeness of God, that they're worth dying for, that they are a reflection of the glory of God. And if you don't have that, everything else is just a waste of your breath, because we have to start there. And sometimes it's that way, even with me day to day. I'm like, I start, oh, I need to be more like Martha and get all these things done and forget. And it's no, maybe today I just need to rest and remind myself of his love.
Yes. And I would say for anyone listening who hears that and they're like, like it just bounces off, I'd encourage them to sit with that. But I wonder why that doesn't have a place to land. Or I wonder why I can't connect with that. And even sit with the Lord and be like, Lord, this just bounces off of me. And try to let him in to that place. I want to mention that I've been really helped by Dr. Peter Malinowski has a community. He calls it the RCC, the Resilient Catholics Community, where from a very psychological point of view, his entire purpose is to help people start to heal so that they can rest in their identity as like a beloved son or daughter of God. And that has also given me a new way to work on myself. But like when I help people, it has given me a whole new way of understanding their mind and helping them work through the parts of their hearts that can't receive love
Yeah.
or don't believe they're worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just seems like no matter what your childhood was like, no matter what happened to you or what kind of school you went to or all that stuff, it's like St. Augustine, we all have that longing for,
Our
for God,
hearts are
that it
restless.
doesn't, yeah, it's because being a mom, both of us being moms, it's how can we make sure that our kids don't fall into the same traps that we did? And I'm sure, like, I'm a convert and I'm like, I'm sending my kids to Catholic school. We don't know what our kids are going to need to walk through, but God already knows. And if he can love and always be knocking on the doors of our hearts, no
Yeah.
matter how far away we felt. The same thing is going to be true for our children. And he's so patient too. How do you approach parenting? How does that influence your parenting? And do you have any advice for others when it comes to?
Yeah, I am not a parenting coach. I'll say that every time because it is challenging. But even just while you were saying those things, it made me think as a parent, you might be freaking out at something you're seeing, but it's such an act of faith and an act of trust in God to allow your kids to walk their own path. And I think something beautiful that like my mom specifically did for me was she never tried to control or arrange what I was doing. She was always available, but she wasn't like ashamed or scared by my struggles.
Yeah.
And I think that as a kid, that's really consoling to know that your parent, as a parent, to be grounded in your identity and in who God is, that there's this implicit steadiness that just stay the path. We don't know his timing. We don't know your story. But even like you said, just trusting how we're supposed to assume the benefit of other people's thoughts, the benefit of the doubt, assuming the benefit of the doubt that God's right. God has this story.
Yeah.
And that whatever it is, it's not for their harms, but
Yeah.
so that they find it in his arms.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful, Nora. I feel like if you live next door, we would be best friends. I'm
Yeah,
sad we live in different states.
I think it would be really fun.
Have you ever heard of Father Donald Calloway? Have you ever heard of he's like an
He wrote
author?
the consecration to Saint Joseph. Okay,
Have you ever heard his conversion story?
little bits. I wouldn't even be able to do it justice to try to summarize it.
When we were getting ready for this interview, it reminded me of him because he talks about how, okay, this is all public part of his
Yeah,
testimony
just
that's all
okay.
available for anyone. But he was like this high school dropout. He was running drugs for the mafia. He got arrested in Japan and deported. Yeah, as a teenager. And he was in and out of rehab for drugs. And he ended up having this huge conversion experience. And now he's this wonderful, holy Catholic priest and very interesting speaker. But I love what he says. Catholicism is the original 12-step program.
He says that. That's
Yeah, because
so
if you
cool.
think about it, what do we do at a 12-step program? It's, hi, my name's Julie, I'm a, and then whatever thing that
Mhm,
you're struggling. And
yeah.
every single mass, we confess our sins. I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters. We're all like the gig is up, like we're all a mess. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's like admitting that and bringing all those things that we would love to hide from
Yeah.
the people who are supposed to love us the most out into the light and saying,
Oh, yeah.
and hey, it's every single mass. It's not like last Sunday I told you guys I was a sinner, but this Sunday I'm not, I've got it figured out. The work of sanctification was done last Sunday. No, we're all in need of each other's support and prayers and forgiveness. And there's no need to hide those things that we struggle with anymore because we
Mhm.
are all struggling in those different ways, but we're still so loved.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between, I think, a life of pretending and a life of freedom in a lot of ways, being able to take those things that we're ashamed of and just saying, yeah, this happened,
Mhm.
or this is what I struggled with, but God is greater than that struggle. Is that what you found through coaching and through your 12-step journey as well?
Oh, yeah. And I think it's so, you hear a lot in the 12 steps, probably everywhere, but that you're as sick as your secrets. And I think that in one way, like my mind, as growing up Catholic or Christian, you're just like, God knows what's in my mind. You're like, yes, but he's also a gentleman and he's not going to just come in and change things. That's a violation of your dignity. So the other part is like in expressing it outwardly, especially 12 step meetings taught me so many things, but it gave me the gift of learning how to be vulnerable in a group of people in a safe space
Yeah.
and learning how to bring out what was on the inside that felt too shameful to say. So I
Yeah.
encourage anyone who has any sort of ism to check out a 12 step group. They're beautiful. But also that lots of times we can sit on our own and just try to hash it out with God. And I think lots of times he works through other people and he's waiting to act perhaps in us reaching out to someone else, a coach, a 12 step group, a counselor, whatever it is, a friend, to be able to speak truth to you through those people so that he can enter the gates of your heart.
I know you talk on your podcast too about emotional sobriety. What exactly does that mean?
So, emotional sobriety, Bill W., who started, he's the founder of AA, wrote an essay titled Emotional Sobriety. And I do have a random 2 episodes in my 365 that is me reading that letter and then giving my own reflections on them. But emotional sobriety being just that steady rock where you don't get rocked or thrown by whatever it is life throws at you because you're rooted and grounded in your identity. And 12 steps wouldn't phrase it that way, but 12 steps would say that when you're recovered emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, they have it as like the 3 legs of a 3-legged stool. If any one of those is off, then you're going to fall over. And as they say that while there is an obsession of the mind with whatever your addiction is, it's also there's a spiritual malady.
Yeah.
And so it's a lifelong journey, but it's one of those things where I think mindset coaching was huge for me because I was able to look at that mental part of it so specifically and seeing how my thinking was contributing to my emotional state or well-being.
Yeah.
And so taking care of myself physically, learning how to have custody of the mind. Other people need deeper work that goes to the subconscious or the unconscious with like professionals in the mental health field. But the beauty of coaching is like so much of our struggles is just on this conscious level that is available. And we can start to work through it that way.
Yeah.
And then the spiritual component, but like in terms of the 12 steps of working through the concept of God and my understanding.
Yeah.
Because it's like you talked about with that pyramid, that's the foot of my pyramid. None of that stuff will have anywhere to land if that isn't right, if that isn't solid.
Yeah.
And that's just like the continuous work of a lifetime for me. Where am I feeling restless, irritable, discontent? That's something in the big book. And now that's how I like to lead my group calls in the Grateful Blessness community that I'm trying to get off the ground. But I ask them these questions: where are you feeling restless, irritable, and discontent? Which is a thing in the big book in the very early pages, whereas that's where your disease is going to start to spike up. And so we need to get in touch with that. But where I've gone with that is, what is your belief about God in that moment
Yeah.
that is causing you to slide into that
Yeah.
and stay there?
And that just by asking that question, you're connecting the person with you're almost reminding them too of their faith, of the fact that we do have, that's an undercurrent under everything we're doing. It comes from that identity. There's this really terrible 80s movie called Moonstruck with Cher and Nicolas Cage. And I don't recommend you watch it, but there's this one part where she's an older woman, she's got grown children, and she finds out that her husband's been cheating on her. And she goes out for a drink by herself and she meets this other guy, and he kind of flirts with her and they end up eating a meal together. They were both eating by themselves at a restaurant, and he offers to walk her home. And when they get to her house, he said, will you invite me in? And she said, no, I know who I am. That's why you can't come inside, because I know who I am. And I feel like that is how what changed in my life to help me reorder. God puts all these good things in our life in right order. And that's kind of what happens every time sin comes knocking on the door. When we know who we are as children of God, as beloved children of God, it's like, you can't come in because I know who I am now. And
Mm.
that is such a strength that no one else can really give you. We can only point to, where that strength comes from. I mean, I think I don't know about for you, Nor, but that's for me. That's the only reason that I have the guts to get in front of this stupid camera and the stupid microphone and make a fool of myself in front of all these people on my social media, those poor people that have to see my posts all the time, is because now I know who I am. If someone's going to comment something mean on my post, it just bounces right off, God willing.
Yeah.
Is that what you've experienced?
I think it's given me like a holy boldness. I don't know how else to describe it. I was a very quiet kid. I don't make friends easily, but it's just something that is almost like bigger than me. There's such a freedom in this. It's not like I came up with this great idea and look how brilliant I am. It's check this thing out. Did you know this existed? Like you got to know. Everybody's got to know.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking about how we need these reminders like all the time. And the 12 steps has a great slogan, you can't stay clean on yesterday's shower. And it's great because every day I need to be reminded about who I am and who he is, and even each moment, because things can change so much, especially like young family life and things like that. There's so much coming at you.
Mhm.
It helps so much to be grounded.
I love that. And you mentioned earlier that poetry had played a big role in your healing process. Is that poetry that you've shared on your blog that you've written, or that you've found inspiring by other people, or both?
It's all that I've written. Yeah, I can't explain it, but it was something that I liked as a kid, something that when I started to get into just be helped by the coaching world, and they're like, what did you like as a kid? I think it was always something that helped me to process things that felt too big
Yeah.
for me. I would put it to a rhythm and I would find the right words, and I like to rhyme. As I was starting to go through this journey of like, Nora, what makes you significant? I started to try to wrestle with it and process through it. Some of them I'm really proud of, others I'm like, nah. And a lot of them aren't even on the website. But the funniest story, it's named Grateful Blessed Mess. I tried to name it Grateful and Blessed and Sometimes a Mess to be more like mindset coachy of I'm not always a mess, I'm just sometimes a mess. And that was way too long, and no one could remember it or wanted to type all that out. Grateful Mess. First post I put on there was a poem that was today I'm more messed than blessed, more in distress than holiness. And it's almost this beat of a thing of this is me. So anyway, it's just an avenue to express whatever I'm wrestling with. It's more of just a personal external processing.
Yeah. I wonder if you have time to pull it up and read one or two of them.
Ooh.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll read that. I can read that Grateful Blessed Mess one.
Yeah, I was like,
Here we go. Yeah, it's the first one listed. I wish I could talk and beat like a rapper or something, but that's so not me. Okay. So it's grateful and blessing the mess. Here we go. Let's be serious here. If I'm going to be sincere, I don't like how I feel, but I'm going to be real. Today, I'm more mess than blessed, more in distress than holiness. Gratitude sounds like platitude. My attitude needs beatitude. The rectitude for which I long seems out of reach. I'm not that strong. Drowning in hypermentalization, this answer, unwanted realization. Reality seems so obscure, my path unclear, a hazy blur. Just need to focus, adjust the lens, then see my worth with you again. Clarity evades my eyes, confusion lingers as guise, but underneath, down at my core, to rest and trust would thus restore. So that's one. And it's more like just, I know where the answer is, but I'm not there yet, but I know it's there.
That was awesome. You are so gifted. You've got to turn that into a book. You've got to,
One day.
oh my gosh, that was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us,
Thank
not
you
just
for
with me, but
asking.
with all of us. We'll definitely link that to your blog in the show notes as well. That was awesome, Nora.
Thank you. It's a gift to go back to it. You don't go back to stuff very often.
Yeah.
Fun.
Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before we wrap up?
I would like to give a shout out for the work I do. Grateful Blessed Mess community on Patreon is where you can find me. And you can see the collection of all my videos and things resources that I've collected that I think are helpful under different categories that I've put out there. And I have live group coaching calls where you can start to work on getting to know your interior life. But that aside, I want to caution anyone to compare their own journey to my own or your own or anyone's that they hear, because I think that we hear stories and we're like, oh, I just have to do that. Or that's nice for her, but that's not in the plans for me or something. And it's just, you're very much on your own journey, and that's how it should be. But that these stories get to be like a beacon of hope along the way, like torches along the byway of wherever you're running. And to just remember that and let the journey become a beautiful one, all of your own. Because even things like the poetry, I didn't plan that. It was just like a natural outpouring of working really hard at the start of my own healing journey, and this tug and pull back and forth of like how I think it should go and where the Lord wants to take me, or just feeling beaten down by life and then resting there and then remembering, no, I want to get back up. So yeah, you get to find out your own beautiful story. And it's going to be a bit of a mess at times, and that's okay.
Yes, you'll be in good company.
You will be a grateful blessed mess. Yeah.
All the saints were also a mess. It's not a secret. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone somewhere is doing, oh gosh, I don't even know. But I stumbled upon something that was like the true life of the saints, like the stuff you didn't know or something like that. And even when I was learning about St. Elizabeth of the Trinity, like her mom said she was ready to kick her to the curb and put her out at the local orphanage because she just couldn't handle her anymore. And I was like, see,
We're all just
nobody's got
human.
it all figured out and put together. That's lovely. Or like you hear about St. Therese, and yeah, maybe she had a bit of a mental illness for a while.
Yeah.
And like the grace of God worked through her and she kept going. And yeah. Like this is it. This is the stuff of life.
Yeah.
Dr. Peter talks about how like the messier something is, or the more important something is, the messier it is.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that we get to come to a place of massive acceptance around that I'm still working on. I love what you're doing, and I just hope the Lord just continues to bless you on this and all the people you're reaching out to, and it's such a gift.
Thanks, Nora. You too. It's nice to meet another coworker in the vineyard.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
All right, have a great day. All right, you too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to Flourishing in Faith. You can learn more about this ministry, share prayer requests, send questions, or even share your own glory story by visiting lifewithchristisbeautiful.com. If you found this episode helpful and think others might too, please rate us and review us or share this with others. All right, lovelies. As Pope Francis says, please pray for me. I'll be praying for you. Thanks.